Russia has been perfecting the art of psychological warfare for over a century. From Stalin's propaganda machinery to the KGB's Cold War disinformation. Today, the same machinery operates through social media, fake reporters, paid experts inside Western media ecosystems. And it's not a new kind of propaganda. It's the same old machinery, only polished for the digital age. Let's talk about this with well-known Caolan Robertson, an Irish journalist and filmmaker who investigates how narratives are built, sold and weaponized. Caolan, it's always a pleasure to have you here in our studio.
Always a pleasure to be here.
So, listen, let's begin from something super shocking for me and surreal. That's a Russian costume rally. I think I'm going to post the video right now here, and people, our viewers will see it. So it happened in the United States just recently, and it was so surreal. There was, outside the building, Ukrainians protesting that Russia are killing them.
Yep.
And then Russians are just, carrying some war symbols and singing some war songs and just laughing from what was written on the Ukrainian pages or whatever papers. That looks surreal. Why is this happening in our modern world, in the United States?
Because Russians will do whatever they can get away with. And right now in America, they feel emboldened. They feel emboldened because the American military rolled out a red carpet for Putin in Alaska. And so Russians in America who support the invasion of Crimea, who support what happened here in 2022, feel empowered. So they went to a pro-Ukraine rally and purposely tried to mess it up. They put out terrorist symbols. They laughed at people who were highlighting stolen Ukrainian children, who were highlighting genocide. And the main point to all of this is, if you're concerned about national security I think the main point is, if you're concerned about national security in the United States, ICE should be raiding the homes of Russians who are driving around in cars with these kind of registration plates. Z Crimea, which is pro-genocide, pro-murder, pro-invasion. And if you vote for Trump and if you're pro-security in America, these people are openly pro-terrorism. Being supportive of what happened to Crimea and being supportive of what Russia is doing to this country every single day is open supporting of terrorism. And if ICE actually care about going after terrorists and people with terrorist sympathies, they should be raiding the homes of every single Russian in America. But this is the same situation in Europe. The Schengen has allowed 530,000 tourist visas of Russians in the last year. It's up 30% from last year. And this is basically allowing people who are openly genocidal into our countries. And every single one of them should be sent home, every single one. And anyone that calls me racist for saying this, I actually couldn't give a fuck. Because Russia is the most racist country on earth. They support the murder of Ukrainians. They support the genocide of an entire population, of an ethnic group. They're actually the racists themselves. So they can call me that all they want. I actually couldn't care less.
Oh, Caolan, I see you very angry today, to be honest, in a very good way, pro-Ukrainian way. But I think that, you are done with the Russian propaganda in general. Still, you mentioned the Alaska. Do you think there was a turning point when people carrying that Z symbol, with a pride, as a symbol of terrorism, but they are carrying it with a pride. Do you think that was a starting point, that Trump was greeting Putin, dictator Putin, killer Putin, on the American soil with that, with a smile and greetings? Or you think that's just something happening in the United States, something very deep, why Russians feel so openly, freely saying those things and showing those things?
No, this started in Alaska. Again, when you have the American military roll out a carpet like that, Russians in America, Russians who are very happy for this war to take place, feel like they can go outside and scream in the streets in support of genocide and murder. And I think every single one of them should be sent back to Russia. But they don't want to go to Russia. And that's strange. They want to live in America. And it's always ironic because Russians who are so patriotic about their motherland don't want to live there. Maybe that's because it's a shithole. Maybe because Russia is a mafia state. It's a place that's actually uninhabitable for a civilized world. And so they go abroad and spread their nationalism, their fake nationalism. And I don't think any of them should be allowed tourist visas anywhere in civilized countries. But they're emboldened. They're emboldened by what the US president has done. And they will continue to be emboldened as long as Trump, I mean, he's changing his stance a bit now, but as long as America normalizes relationships with Russia. They're talking about lifting sanctions still today. And all the Russian refugees, Amazon refugees I call them, who only left because they didn't like the sanctions, are celebrating. They're opening champagne.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm recalling 2022, just I think the whole year since the Russian full-scale invasion to Ukraine, in the United States particularly, because I've been there for 3 months in 2022, Russians, they were silent, to be honest. They were not organizing any events of their culture, of their outfit, which they're actually sold from Ukrainians. So they were not organizing any festivals dedicated to Russian culture, food, or whatever. And then something has happened. They started to create some, to ask people to come and see their theater performance or reading some literature evening. So, and it just, they were just quiet and feeling sorry, not for a long time.
Yeah, well, Russians have also weaponized culture for a long time. This is what we saw with Russians at War at the Venice Film Festival.
Oh, yeah.
They export fake versions of culture, usually stolen Ukrainian culture, actually. Their opera houses are usually stolen songs from Ukrainian opera singers. But this is a country that is always on the defense and always playing the victim. And that's what they're doing now. But they feel more emboldened than ever. And they shouldn't be. I mean, they should just go home, back to where they belong. Every single one of them. They don't belong in civilized countries. If you behave like that, if you export terrorist ideologies like ISIS does, we don't allow ISIS fighters back to Britain. We don't allow people that were part of Al-Qaeda back to America. If you try to get a flight to America now, there's a form that you have to fill in that says, have you been to Syria? Have you been to certain countries? Do you support terrorism? So we should be against that. But we allow Russians who support terrorism here every single day. Makes no sense.
I was thinking today that probably we will never get to the day and point when everybody will be against that. Everybody will be, on the same page against Russian terrorism or whatever terrorism on earth.
The issue is as well is that Russia is very good at propaganda, and Russia has sent and exported the elite of their children to Oxford, to Cambridge, to Harvard, to Yale, and to the elite schools. And that's the schools that our politicians go to. And so whenever you ask any politician in Britain or America or France what they think of Russians, they think back to their childhood days of when they were friends with a Russian and everything was okay and there's some good ones and it's all kind of fine. But this was an integral part of that propaganda, and we have allowed that to infest for far too long. And now I'm honestly on a rampage with this. I'm completely sick of it. And seeing cars with registration plates like this with Z Crimea that the DMZ allowed in America, this is a new level. This is an escalation. It's a new level of normalization of terrorism. What
Trump could do with that thing?
Well, Trump doesn't really care. I mean, Trump, he's allowed Tomahawk missiles into this country, which is great. But he kind of he thought that he could have this war over with in 3 days. That was his campaign promise. He's annoyed that he was betrayed by his good old friend Putin. He realizes that Putin is as genocidal as he is. So now he's kind of fed up with it. So he's not going to actually clamp down on what he needs to do. But his shift is quite interesting. He has started to side with Ukraine more because Trump wants to be on the side of winners. He doesn't like to be on the side of losers. All Trump cares about is himself and whoever he can surround himself with that's winning. He's a narcissist. And I think he thinks that Putin is a loser. Putin is losing this war. Putin is terrible on the world stage. And so I think he's arming Ukraine right now because he realizes that to be on the side of losers is to be on the side of Russia. So it's an interesting shift.
I just imagining the Russian bots commenting on this quote right
Yeah,
now.
well, they can comment whatever the hell they like.
Yeah.
That's fine.
No. I'm just, yeah, that's a good thing. That's a good point you're saying. Yeah, you know, I just discovered that Al Jazeera recently uncovered a network of ghost reporters. So it's just a fake journalist built from stolen photos, including of dead people, publishing pro-Russian and anti-Western articles across Africa. Why Africa? Because just recently, just a few days ago, I had a conversation with Arthur Snell, actually, the one that we met at the festival of Vladimir Putin Dufakov. And we were talking about the Russian propaganda in the countries of so-called global south. And we were talking about Africa. And then I started to dig deeper, and I realized that there are so many such journalists who they have fake names, fake identity, fake picture, and they're writing something. I don't know, what does it tell to us about the future of journalism?
It's a mess. I mean, Russia today have been using AI for a long time. Margarita Simonyan admit to this. She said that we've been using fake journalists for years. The counter to this is YouTube clamping down on AI, which is in a good way in some ways. But things are about to get very, very, very messy. Russia are far better than Britain and America and even Ukraine in propaganda and bullshit. And they're going to really, really weaponize things in the next few years. So I'm extremely concerned about it. There isn't really a counter to this. There have been tribunals, there have been hearings at Senate meetings in the last few years with judges who are in their 70s or in their 80s who decide policy in the United States. And when asked about tweets that are putting out fake misinformation and propaganda, the judges couldn't decide and understand the difference between tweets and emails. This is how behind we are on understanding warfare and information warfare. We have a judicial system that doesn't know the difference between tweets and emails. We have no idea what's coming next and how to combat it. And it can't just be left to other journalists to defeat fake news. It has to be done at government level, and the government has to start understanding how things are working and how serious it is.
And yeah, to be honest, Russia is super effectively using social medias. The comments, and they're so good in false narratives.
Yes.
Sometimes you're reading that comments, I'm like, okay, you're starting to hesitate in your own knowledge. So, and it's me as a Ukrainian. I could not imagine what Western people, think, and probably
it's going to get a lot worse. There will be tweets and TikToks put out of me and you by Russians in the next year, saying that we don't like Ukraine, that there's corruption here. There will be AI videos, even of us. I can expect this happening even to me, that the Russians will start using. And it's a threat that we just don't understand yet. And it's going to be really, really, really serious.
Do you think what gives you the signs that it will happen? Do you think Russia is that desperate? Or is that just, as I said in introduction, the part of the same machinery, the same approach of propaganda?
Russia's in a weak spot right now. Russia on the world stage has been abandoned by the Americans. Putin thought that he had his first hand at Alaska. Trump's now going to arm this country. They're going to amp up their propaganda between now and Christmas through the roof. And they do it because of desperation, but they also do it because they've always done it. The Soviets put out propaganda posters demonizing farmers in the Soviet days. During the Holodomor, they tried to turn Ukrainians against farmers, and they're the best at this. They're the best at turning people against each other and putting out hatred. So they're just doing it again.
Yes. You know what? Just recently also, there was a Polish blogger who was attacked in Poland by their own people because people thought she's Ukrainian. And she was attacked. She was describing that people just started to attack her when she went out from the supermarket. So the thing is, what also surprised me, unfortunately, that how effectively Russia used Polish elections just to turn Polish people against Ukrainians. So just Polish attacks their own people without any knowing and understanding. And it's actually, that's killing me. That's killing me.
But that is their tactic. It's, if we can't take Kyiv in 3 days, we will surround Ukraine with pro-Putin, horrible, horrible dictators. This is what we've seen in Hungary. This is what we've seen in Belarus. It's surrounding Ukraine with pro-Russian shills because that's their tactic. It's to try and surround this country with pro-Putin governments, and to an extent it's working, and it's unfortunate. But we just don't take the Russian threat seriously enough. We don't tackle election interference. We don't tackle information warfare in the way that it needs to be dealt with. We allow people like Phidias to pollute our politics. And for as long as that goes on for, this will continue happening. But if you look at a map of Ukraine right now and you zoom out, you see Hungary, you see Belarus, now you see Poland. And they're surrounding this country and they have Putin sympathies. It was intentional.
Kaylin, can we admit that there will not be any proper pill, medicine against Russian propaganda ever?
I mean, I think one day we'll probably wake up and deal with the Russian threat seriously. But at the end of my Estonia documentary, I interviewed a woman who survived the Soviet occupation. And she said, survival instincts kick in at the last second, always at the last second. When you realize that you might go extinct, when you really realize what the true threat is, that's when you start caring. And that's when you start taking action. And there's a movie called And there's a movie called The Day That the Earth Stood Still. And it's about a sort of alien landing in New York. And just at the very, very, very last second, that's when humanity acted, because it thought that it would go extinct. It realized the true threat. And we saw this in World War II. America hesitated right up until the last second to help Britain. And that's the moment that we stormed the beaches in D-Day, because Britain thought that it would go extinct. And it might take that to defeat Russia, the moment that people realize that they're facing extinction. And that's unfortunate.
Have you seen the movie, the American movie, Don't Look Up?
Yes.
Yes.
That.
So that's also what's happening right now. Everybody's saying about, as you said, the Russian threat. That's a serious thing happening.
Yes.
And nobody cares. And people just, still being friends with Russia, making business with Russia. And
it's a great analogy. And that film is great because it shows the TV news networks pretending this isn't happening, pretending there isn't a threat, pretending that there isn't terrorism on the streets, pretending that Russia isn't the aggressor. And they're all acting like everything's okay. That film is a perfect analogy of what Russia is doing to this country and what Russia will do to the rest of Europe. And the film ends with the annihilation of Earth. Rightfully, because if we allow fascism and extremism and places like Russia to continue what they're doing, it would be the end of the world. So it's fitting.
I was reading the quote that said that against the best enemy of any propaganda is intellectualism. Is that what you mean when you're saying waking up?
No.
Knowledge?
No, I think it's investing, putting MI6's resources, deporting Russians, taking the Russian threat seriously. It's allocating all of our intelligence services in the rest of the West to combating Russia, to not allowing them to enter our countries, to not allowing them to drive cars with registration plates that support terrorism. That's the moment that we wake up.
Last year I had a meeting in Brussels at the European Union. I had a meeting with a lot of people there. It was kind of a huge excursion for journalists. And I was a part of this group. And I remember when we were at the Department of Cybersecurity at the European Union, and they said, we were talking about the Russian propaganda. And the narratives they are spreading, actually lots of narratives about Zelensky that I haven't heard ever. And something about he's having villa where he's spending money, that he's stealing money. So the thing is, what he said, that Russia is spreading propaganda everywhere. It's paying, as you said, billions of dollars.
Yes.
But they said, you cannot imagine how much money they're spending on propaganda against Ukraine. It's like the top of the top.
Yes.
Especially for the last around 5 years. Just enormous amount of propaganda. It just, wow.
Which doesn't really work because people in Ukraine know propaganda when they see it now. And the idea that so Russians are sort of...
So? I think it's so easy sometimes even for very smart people to become a victim of propaganda.
Well, that's true. I mean, I always say that countries that have a closer proximity to Russia understand it far more.
Far more.
But yeah, I mean, that's also true. But Russia like to focus all the propaganda on the conscriptions that are happening here and people being abducted in the streets and people being, whatever. Whereas this is actually only really seriously happening in Russia. Nightclubs being raided constantly, gyms being raided constantly. The people that are fighting here in this country are volunteers, people that choose to fight. These are the people that I speak to all the time. Of course, there's a draft. That's normal in a war. But when it comes to people actually being pulled off the street against their will, that's mainly happening in Russia. And that's the kind of propaganda that they're throwing against here constantly, and it doesn't really have much of an impact. My biggest concern is that it works in Britain and it works in America. Every single time I go home, I feel like I'm going crazy because people have no idea about the Russian threat. They think that there's two sides. I was on Irish TV recently, and they were like, what about people on the other side? What about,
On what side?
On the other side of the front line. That's what they asked me on Irish TV. Do they not have feelings? Do they not have dreams? And I was like, yeah. When I was looking up at a drone that was about to drop a grenade on me in Kherson, I was definitely looking through the lens and thinking, I wonder what the operator thinks. I wonder if he has a family. I wonder if he has dreams.
That's a dark humor.
Bullshit. Yeah, no. This is the problem with Western media. Is it thinks that this is a two-side situation, and it isn't. There's an aggressor and there's an innocent country. But yeah, I mean, no time for this.
Yeah. Kaylin, I was privileged to be on your premiere of a movie that touched me so much. The movie about a lot of ways of Russian genocide against Ukrainians. And that was a movie about Ukrainian farmers, and especially about Ukrainian farmer Alexander. You mentioned him before. And Alexander Gordienko, he just recently died, and that was a very, very sad story. Every loss of Ukrainian is a very sad story.
Of course.
But he was a heroic person. And how are you right now feeling after you going to release movie publicly? What reaction you wanna see from the audience? What message the audience see and hear and understand from this touching documentary?
I want Americans that support freedom and democracy to look at that farmer, to look at Alexander, who carried a shotgun every single day, who was badass, Texas style, and for them to realize just what Russia is doing and what's at stake. Everyone loves farmers all across the planet, and he had a choice. He could have gone anywhere else, but he stayed to defend his land, to grow food from his soil, and he represents every single value of America, which is freedom, democracy, and the love for your country. And that is what is at stake in Ukraine. And that's why so many Americans love Ukraine. But that's also why I made this film, because he represents everything that Americans believe in. And what Russia is doing, a communist, dictatorship, fascist state, is to destroy that freedom. And he represents it. And you remember at the end of the film, every single farmer, they said he was liberating his land and he motivated us to still grow food from our soil, to still exist, to not leave, to not flee tyranny. The reason that the Second Amendment exists in America is to have the right to bear arms against a tyrannical government. Well, that's Russia. And that's what he did when he held his shotgun. Yeah. And that's why I made that film.
Wow. And also in that movie, that amazing Ukrainian lady farmers they were explaining why they are doing this, why they are not running away. Extremely touching, to be honest, because I was like, and their optimism, Kaylin. I think sometimes people who are far away from the front line, far away from the threat that they are living under, and they are not as optimistic as those people. It feels like they're just living and, enjoying every minute of their life. And thanks to them, we have food and bread and vegetables on our tables.
They're amazing. Their optimism, again, it comes back to what we talked about earlier about survival instinct kicking in. So many of the farmers that I interviewed said, we didn't realize what we had until it was gone. When her son was liberated, then they came back and they realized how beautiful and fertile the soil was in their country. And that's when they realized this new appreciation for their home. And that's also why every single farmer I spoke to used to speak Russian, but they learned Ukrainian to make a point. And that's why they're not going to leave. It is the most inspiring thing I have ever seen in my life. And Khersonians are incredible.
When you were presenting the movie, the family of Alexander Hordienko was there.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably all of them, or mostly all of them.
Yes.
What feelings did you have at that moment? I remember you was quite speechless, to be honest.
I was speechless. I mean, Alexander's his daughter was there, everyone was there. They gave me, I remember I was standing on stage and they handed me a bread from his last harvest. And they just appreciated the fact that someone was telling their father's story. And it was strange because a month ago this week, I was on a flight to Ireland and I was looking out at the clouds and I found out the news that Alexander was killed. And I became obsessed with his story and I couldn't stop thinking about him. And Alexander's daughter said to me that on his way to heaven, he stopped on that plane and told me to make this film. And I'm not spiritual, but there's something spiritual about all of this. And she realized that I'm very good at storytelling and very good at filmmaking. And I was probably the best person to be able to show this. It was unbelievable. But I'm just extremely proud and privileged to have been able to tell his story. But everything in Ukraine feels so symbolic. That bread that they gave me had the symbol of Ukraine at the top. It had the flag underneath it, and it had corn sewed onto the side. I've never felt anything like it before, but it felt right. I'm really glad that I could have told that. But they turned that misery of their father being killed into passion that I've never seen anywhere else in the world. And his legacy was incredible. So I've just felt proud to tell that film. But I mean, I'm still kind of processing it, really.
Yeah, it's actually, this film, it's worth to be seen by millions. And that's what I want to happen with this movie.
They will.
And, to summarize probably on some inspirational note, I know you have a very good news about donations to the Ukrainian 69 Brigade, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just tell me what has happened. Maybe our viewers don't know, but you are very persistent with the donations and helping Ukrainian army to get what they need. So what did you get? What has happened?
Yeah, no, so in the last couple of hours, I got a voice note from the brigade. So how do I explain that, actually? In the last few hours, I received a voice note saying that I finally hit the target, and this was to get 2 trucks to the front, to units that are in Pokrovsk. And these cars are amazing. They've got jammers on the top, and it was extremely exciting to hear this. Amazing, because I love telling the truth about what's happening in this country, and I love telling stories about what Russia's doing and exposing the war crimes that is happening here. But being able to physically help people who, I love soldiers on the front. Every single time I stay with units in Sumy or Dobrobilia, anywhere, they always cook an amazing meal, and they just are the best people, the best. And being able to get them cars feels incredible for the soul. So this has just happened. This is great, and I think I'm going to try and donate a lot more. But it was always hard to do because I'm a journalist. I'm not an activist, and I would get accusations by saying, "Well, you're on the side of Ukraine. You're being paid by Zelensky. You're doing this and this and this." But I don't really care about that anymore. It feels great to be able to help people that are genuinely on the side of good. And I saw Paul Conroy last night as well. This is a journalist that has been to 19 wars. And he said, this is the first time I've ever taken a proper side. This isn't a civil war. This isn't a religious war. This is genuinely good versus evil. And I don't care if people call me an activist for supporting this country. I actually don't care as a mainstream journalist. This is genuinely on the side of good, and it feels great to help.
To be honest, sometimes I hear from war reporters that they are saying, when you are filming on the front line, sometimes you don't know which side is more guilty and it's not sure. But the only war is completely clear who is aggressor is with Russia and Ukraine.
Of course.
So, I mean, that's what I've heard recently, and I think that makes a lot of sense. And I'm really appreciated that for the foreign journalists, war correspondents, that they're very good at this. They realizing what's happening, and they know the truth.
It's obvious. I mean, it's obvious. You can see this.
It's obvious, yes.
Every single time I've seen a missile attack, it's been against a civilian building. It's been against innocent people everywhere. In Kherson, drones targeting buses, maternity wards in Odessa, priests in Kherson. It's obvious. So that's why it feels great to be able to actually tangibly do something. But yeah, I don't care about anyone that says otherwise.
Yeah. Well, Kaelan, thank you so much for that you are doing what you're doing with your reporting, with your volunteering, as you said, because it's becoming part of your job and part of you, actually, because it's just good that you're doing that for Ukraine. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This was cool.